At 17, a kid from Ohio knocked the Beatles off #1. Then he taught rock stars how to sound like legends while his own name vanished. He spliced magnetic tape by hand to birth the decade's biggest instrumental. He wrote the anthem that made Hulk Hogan immortal and presidents famous. Yet the Rock Hall passed him by, too good at everything to be remembered for anything. No drugs, no scandal, just the curse of being left behind. This is the rise and fall of Rick Derringer, Fort Recovery, Ohio, 1956. Picture a small Midwestern town where the railroad still defined time and work, still meant something you could touch. Rick Derringer's father was a section foreman for the Nickel Plate Railroad, a man who understood how complex systems worked, how precision mattered, how every bolt and rail had to fit exactly right or the whole thing derailed. That same mechanical precision would later define Rick's approach to music, but first came the spark. He was 8 years old when his uncle, Jim Thornburg, walked into the family kitchen with a guitar. The moment Uncle Jim started playing, something ignited in young Rick that would burn for the next 7 decades. For his 9th birthday, his parents gave him his first electric guitar. Most kids would have played around with it for a few weeks and moved on. Rick Derringer treated it like a sacred tool. Before we continue, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. His first real teacher wasn't some conservatory-trained virtuoso. It was Gene Feely, a mechanic at the local Ford garage. Feely taught him the fundamental G and D chords, and Rick played them thousands of times in a single night, obsessively perfecting the mechanical movement required to produce a clean sound. This was the blue-collar approach to mastery. No shortcuts, no theory books, just repetition until the muscle memory became instinct. By the time he was 15, Rick and his brother Randy had formed the McCoys in Union City, Indiana. They named themselves after a Ventures instrumental track called The McCoy, a tribute to the craftsmanship they admired. They weren't just another garage band fumbling through covers. They practiced with the discipline of factory workers, operating under various names like Rick and the Raiders and the Rick Z Combo, becoming a popular attraction on the Midwest club circuit. Uncle Jim had taught Rick more than just chords. He'd shown him complex jazz standards, giving him a musical vocabulary far broader than most of his peers. This versatility would later become his greatest asset, and ironically, one of the reasons he'd never quite fit into the singular spotlight of solo superstardom. The McCoys were professionals before they were even old enough to vote. They understood that being good wasn't enough. You had to be reliable, disciplined, ready. And in the summer of 1965, that discipline was about to pay off in ways they couldn't have imagined. Summer 1965. The McCoys were hired to back a fictional group called the Strangeloves during a concert in Dayton, Ohio. The Strangeloves weren't really a band. They were New York songwriters and producers named Feldman, Gauderer, and Goldstein, and they were searching for a face to put on a song they believed could be a hit. The song was called My Girl Sloopy, a minor R&B track that had been recorded by the Vibrations in 1964. It hadn't done much, but these producers heard something in it, a raw garage rock energy that could explode if the right band delivered it. When the McCoys showed up for the audition, they were wearing Beatles suits with identical haircuts, perfectly mirroring the British invasion aesthetic that was dominating American radio. Rick, barely 17 years old, already had sharp instincts for the market. He persuaded the producers to change the title from My Girl Sloopy to Hang On Sloopy. Catchier, more urgent, better. The recording session was quick. The producers handled the instrumental tracks, but the McCoys provided the vocals that would propel the song into the stratosphere. It was released on Bang Records, a label whose logo, a Derringer pistol, would inspire Rick's permanent stage name. In August 1965, Hang On Sloopy entered the charts. By October, it had reached #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, knocking the Beatles' Yesterday out of the top spot. For kids who'd been practicing in garages and playing VFW halls, this was the American dream made real. The song became a cultural phenomenon. It was eventually designated as the official rock song of the state of Ohio and became a permanent fixture at Ohio State University football games. Rick later recalled hearing that Sloopy was broadcast in Red Square in the Soviet Union, a moment that blew them away as they realized their music had penetrated the Iron Curtain. But success came with a hidden cost. Rick would later reflect that while they believed the music business was easy, they had inadvertently sold themselves down the river contractually. Despite the massive airplay and sales, the band members saw little of the actual wealth. They'd been cheated about every way you can. Even worse, the song's catchy sing-along nature got them labeled a bubblegum act. For a group of musicians who viewed themselves as serious students of rock and blues, this label was poison. They tried to shed it with more progressive releases like Infinite McCoys and Human Ball, but the commercial tide had turned. By the late 1960s, the McCoys had reinvented themselves as the house band at Steve Paul's Scene Club in New York. It was a dramatic shift, from chart-topping teen idols to underground club musicians. But this move would facilitate the most significant transformation of Rick Derringer's career. The kid who'd knocked the Beatles off #1 was about to become something far more valuable to the industry. The invisible architect who made other stars shine. In 1969, Rick Derringer and the McCoys merged with blues virtuoso Johnny Winter to form Johnny Winter And. The "and" was a direct reference to the McCoys, though management was hesitant to use their name because of those lingering bubblegum associations. This collaboration represented a profound synthesis of talents. Johnny Winter brought raw, blistering blues rock energy, lightning-fast solos, and an improvisational genius that could electrify any room. Rick brought the structured craftsmanship and melodic sensibility of a pop-trained musician who understood how to translate chaos into something radio could play. Rick's role wasn't just as a second guitarist. He became a stabilizing force, a producer who could take Winter's wild genius and shape it into a format that resonated with a wider audience. Few players understood how to support a soloist of Winter's caliber with the necessary technical precision. So Rick took the rhythm position and thought like a producer while playing. The partnership resulted in some of the most iconic blues rock recordings of the 1970s, including Johnny Winter and Still Alive and Well. Simultaneously, Rick began working with Johnny's brother, Edgar Winter. He produced the Edgar Winter Group's landmark album, They Only Come Out at Night, which featured two massive hits, Frankenstein and Free Ride. The production of Frankenstein remains a testament to Rick's technical ingenuity. The song originated as a sprawling, experimental jam, too long, too loose, too weird for radio. Rick and Edgar spent countless hours physically cutting and splicing magnetic tape, assembling the best sections into a cohesive, radio-ready instrumental. This was the laboratory approach to music creation. They weren't just playing, they were engineering, building something new from fragments of genius. The track earned a Grammy nomination and hit #1. During this period, Rick also wrote and recorded what would become his signature song, Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo. It first appeared on the Johnny Winter And album, then on the live set, Roadwork, encapsulating the quintessential 1970s rock ethos, heavy riffs, bluesy grooves, and a rebellious spirit. By the time Rick decided to launch his solo career in earnest, he was no longer just the kid who sang Sloopy. He was one of the most respected players and producers in the industry, a guitar hero in the truest sense. But the question was, could he become the star? Or was he destined to remain the man behind the stars? October 1973. Rick Derringer released his debut solo studio album, All American Boy. The timing seemed perfect. He had the momentum of the Winter Brothers' success, a reputation for production excellence, and a hit single ready to go, his own version of Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo. The album was recorded at the legendary Caribou Ranch in Colorado, and featured an array of guest musicians, including Joe Walsh. It was a showcase of Rick's diverse talents, hard rock and country honk on tracks like Cheap Tequila, and sophisticated ballads co-written with a then-unknown Patti Smith.
Rock and roll, hoochie coo.
Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo became a hit, reaching number 23 on the Billboard Hot 100. It cemented its place as the ultimate party song of the 70s. Critics lauded the album as a sadly neglected album of great merit, highlighting Rick's multi-instrumental virtuosity. But, despite the strength of the single, and the high quality of tracks throughout the album, commercial success at the superstar level never materialized. This disconnect between individual song success and album longevity began to define the almost moment of Rick's solo career. While he was undeniably a guitar ace, the industry and the public increasingly viewed him as a complementary player rather than a leading man. Critics noted that while his guitar work was indispensable, his vocals, though competent, lacked the unique, gravelly character of contemporaries like Johnny Winter, or the stadium-shaking presence of the era's emerging frontmen. Rick himself later reflected that he was trapped by his own success into only doing rock, even as his musical tastes were evolving toward jazz and more grown-up arrangements. The market demanded a singular, easily branded hero. Rick was too versatile to be pinned down to a single rock identity. The All-American Boy era demonstrated the paradox of his career. He was so good at everything that he couldn't be defined by any one thing, and in an industry that loved to put artists in boxes, that versatility became a liability. The late 1970s represented one final push. In 1976, Rick formed the band Derringer, a powerhouse quartet featuring Vinnie Appice on drums, Kenny Aronson on bass, and Danny Johnson on guitar. They were a scintillating live proposition, touring with burgeoning giants like Aerosmith, Boston, and Tom Petty. They released a string of hard rock albums, Derringer, Sweet Evil, and If I Weren't So Romantic, I'd Shoot You. That leaned into a heavier, more aggressive sound. But something was happening in the culture that Rick couldn't control. The late 70s brought seismic shifts. Punk exploded, rejecting the technical virtuosity Rick had spent his life perfecting. Disco dominated the charts with synthesizers and drum machines. And then came MTV, a visual medium that demanded a certain look, a certain youth, a certain brand of glamour that had nothing to do with how well you could play. Rick's band, despite its technical proficiency, struggled to capture its live energy in the studio. The industry began to view Rick as a nearly man, a musician with an incredible pedigree who somehow got left behind. His attempts to diversify, like the disco-influenced track Envy, were criticized as missteps. By 1978, the band had fractured. The era of Rick Derringer as a potential stadium headliner had effectively ended. But here's what's crucial to understand. Rick Derringer didn't fail. The world simply moved on without him. He was a man of the 1960s and early 70s, an era of craftsmanship and technical mastery. As the 80s approached, the industry's focus shifted toward image, synthesizers, and video-ready personalities. Rick, with his commitment to blues rock fundamentals and his blue-collar work ethic, found himself a stranger in a new land. He wasn't a failure. He was an artisan in an age of mass-produced glamour. In the 1980s, Rick pivoted back to the role that had always sustained him, the master session player and producer. His craftsmanship was sought after by an astonishingly diverse array of artists. He contributed guitar work to Steely Dan's Gaucho, Alice Cooper's Killer, and even pop icons like Cyndi Lauper and Barbra Streisand. His melodic solo on Air Supply's Making Love Out of Nothing at All, and his work on Bonnie Tyler's Total Eclipse of the Heart, demonstrated that he could adapt his guitar hero sensibilities to the high drama power ballads of the decade. But this decade also introduced a new kind of professional displacement. In the mid-80s, Rick discovered and produced the first 6 albums for Weird Al Yankovic, including the Grammy-winning parodies Eat It and Fat. The collaboration was artistically successful and highly lucrative, but Rick later claimed it single-handedly ruined his production career. The industry began to view him as a novelty producer. Serious rock and alternative acts feared his association with comedy music would undermine their credibility. Then came 1985. Rick produced the wrestling album for the World Wrestling Federation. He and his partner, Bernard Kenny, wrote Real American with the intent of creating the most patriotic song of all time. Originally intended for the tag team US Express, the song was eventually adopted by Hulk Hogan, becoming the defining theme of the Hulkamania era. The song transcended wrestling. It was later used in political campaigns by figures as diverse as Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and Donald Trump. Rick had written one of the most recognizable anthems in American culture, but once again, he remained in the shadows. He was the producer of the funny guy. The the writer of the wrestler's song. His status as an elite rock guitarist was increasingly obscured by his success in these cross-media niches. For a man who'd knocked the Beatles off number 1 at 17, the quiet displacement must have been excruciating. Still talented, still contributing, still capable, just no longer seen. The later years of Rick Derringer's life were marked by a profound spiritual shift. Following a difficult period in the late 1980s involving divorce and professional frustration, Rick experienced a spiritual awakening, returning to his Christian roots. He refocused his music on positive, faith-based messages. He continued to perform his classic hits, but often modified the lyrics to reflect his new worldview, such as changing "Still Alive and Well" to reference the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Musically, he remained active. He toured with Ringo Starr's all-star band from 2011 to 2014 and participated in guitar retrospectives like Peter Frampton's Guitar Circus. His 2024 projects reflected a man at peace with his age and his grown-up musical tastes, moving away from the young rock and roller image the public often tried to impose on him. But the most contentious aspect of Rick's legacy remains his absence from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Despite his #1 hit with the McCoys, his essential work with the Winter Brothers, and his massive influence as a producer and session player, he was never inducted as a solo artist or as a primary member of a group. This exclusion led to his lighthearted but poignant induction into the foyer of fame by fans and peers, a recognition of his diverse talents and oddly influential career that never quite fit the Hall's specific categories. Yet, the Hall of Fame's doors remained closed. Rick Derringer passed away on May 26, 2025, at the age of 77. His death prompted a wave of tributes from the musicians, who understood the depth of his contribution. He died not as a victim of rock's dark side, but as a craftsman who had figured it out. His legacy is that of the quintessential guitar hero who was left behind by fame, but never by his instrument. He remains a symbol of an era when rock and roll was built by hand, one riff and one spliced tape at a time. Rick Derringer's story isn't about failure or collapse. It's about the quiet dignity of the journeyman, the craftsman who does the work while others take the spotlight. He taught us that being left behind by trends doesn't mean you've lost your edge. It simply means you're no longer playing their game. From a garage in Fort Recovery to the global stage, he remained a student of the instrument and a master of the craft. His music is still alive and well, a permanent part of the American fabric. What's your memory of Rick Derringer? Drop it in the comments and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories from rock's forgotten heroes.